did I end up here? I kept asking myself that question about 1,000,000 times since this nightmare began. Those things out there, me trapped in here. I'm Marcus Bishop. I had left Murphy, North Carolina, before the sun hit the ridgeline. It wasn't just a drive, it was a needed reset. Route 76 South would take me through the mountains, winding past waterfalls, a few forgotten ranger stations, and thick green wild that had claimed whole towns. From there, I'd catch a 75, slide into Atlanta by nightfall, and hopefully never look back. I had job interviews lined up with a few airlines, and I knew that with my military record and background, any airline would be glad to have me. It was a chance at steady work and a new life and home, a new beginning. I needed it. At 35, I was still in good shape like the ranger I used to be. Broad-shouldered, quiet-eyed, always scanning. 2 tours in the Marines before becoming a pilot for the Army. And I'd seen what real fear looked like in the sky and on the ground. This road didn't scare me. This forest didn't scare me. Nothing human did. But machines? They always failed when you needed them most. It happened somewhere deep in the Chattahoochee National Forest with no mile markers, no traffic, no way to tell north from anywhere. The Cutlass choked once, spat steam through the vents, and rolled to a slow, pitiful stop on the side of the road. I got out, popped the hood, and stared at the smoking wreck of his radiator like it had personally betrayed him. There was no help coming. No payphones or cell signals, no other cars. Just forest. I checked my map, an old paper foldout. The edges were worn and soft from use. According to the route, I should have been close to a turnoff, maybe a fire trail. But with the way the road snaked through the national forest, I could have been 20 miles from anything. I slung my rucksack over one shoulder, locked the car out of habit, and started walking toward whatever came next. The forest thickened fast. Sunlight slipped between towering pines and crooked oaks, but the canopy swallowed most of it. Birds went quiet. Crickets chirped high and nervously. The deeper I went, the more the trail felt like it was closing behind me, one foot in front of the other. Overgrown trails, mud underfoot. The smell of moss, bark, and wet stone filled my lungs. It was creepy, yet comforting. To my mind flashed back to deployments where my team and I would camp out under the night sky, making jokes, being careful not to give away our position, yet still enjoying the laughs. I must have walked 5 miles, maybe more. Hard to tell in this terrain. Then the clouds rolled in. The first crack of thunder sounded like it came from inside the forest itself. By the time the sky opened, I was already soaked. Rain hit hard and fast. That dropped, pounding leaves, splashing off limbs, soaking through clothes in seconds. I tried to rig a quick shelter using a bungee cord and poncho crouched beneath a rock outcropping, but it was useless. The wind howled through the trees. My boots squelched in the mud. That's when I saw it. Through the sheet of fast-falling rain tucked back behind a curtain of hanging moss and pine branches. An old cabin, crooked and sunken into the earth, its roof sagging, front porch half collapsed. A relic of some other time. No light, no movement, but it was dry. I moved quickly through the clearing, boots splashing through puddles, eyes locked on the crooked old cabin ahead. Rain pounded the earth around me, but just as I reached the front steps, a howl, long, deep, close. It came from my left, so loud it cut through the storm like a saw. Then, like a call being answered, a second howl rose from the trees on my right. Bigger, louder, closer. The branches snapped. Heavy rustling followed. Something huge was moving, clearing a path as if the dense growth couldn't stop it, and it was heading towards me. I quickly bolted for the door. I pushed it hard with my shoulder and stumbled inside, the warped wood groaning under the impact. The smell hit me instantly. Wet dog, copper, feces. The kind of stink that settles in your mouth and clings to your skin. I pushed the door shut behind me, but there was no lock, no deadbolt, not even a latch. Just me, four walls, and whatever the hell was out there. My fingers moved fast, pulling the small key light from my cargo pocket. A narrow white beam flicked the light, cutting through the gloom's tight burst. Two of them, one in front, one in back. The windows were filthy, caked in grime and unrecognizable shapes. There was only one door and no good places to hide. I stepped to the center of the room, light low to the ground, careful not to trip. Then my boot hit something soft. I froze, bent down, shined the light. It was a small, worn sneaker, the kind with cartoon eyes and peeling Velcro. I picked it up. 3T, a toddler. Then I turned it over. A tiny foot was still inside, gnawed off at the ankle. My stomach turned. I dropped the shoe, nearly stumbling back and using a hand to cover my mouth. I stepped over it and moved toward the back room window. Outside, the howling stopped. In its place, snorts, low growls, and yips, like laughter. Then the lightning struck. For a split second, the clearing exploded in white light. And I saw it through the back room window. 20 yards away, standing upright, taller than any man. A hulking, fur-covered canine creature. Its head was large and wolf-like, its black fur soaked from the rain. Yellow eyes glowing. Its jaws hung open, dripping spit and blood, revealing 2 rows of serrated fangs. Its arms hung low, almost to its knees, and its chest rose and fell with bestial rhythm. It wasn't alone. I followed its gaze. My eyes adjusted, and through the rustling of the bushes, another pair of eyes, higher, deeper yellow, watching from the tree line. Then, slowly, a figure emerged. A wolf-headed creature even bigger. Thick, jet-black fur, towering with a broader chest, pointed ears that twitched with each gust of wind. A long, bushy tail flicked behind it like a whip, clearly male. The 2 creatures stepped toward each other, nuzzled gently. The smaller one whimpered low. The black-furred giant licked its muzzle. Their tails began to sway in sync. I stood awestruck. They were mates, predator and partner, male and female. And now, they were here, together. I snapped out of it, and my eyes darted around the ruined main room. Nothing. No weapons, no hiding places, just rot and filth. I retreated into the back bedroom, heart pounding, brain still catching up to what I'd seen. I didn't care what they were, only that they were coming. From the backyard, their heavy footfalls grew louder, then split. One moved left. One moved right, flanking. With every pulse of lightning, their silhouettes flashed past the grime-caked windows, massive forms gliding low like predators on 2 legs. I looked to the bed, collapsed and gutted. No chance of hiding there. Then I heard it. The flies. A thick, sickening buzz coming from the far wall. I moved my pen light toward the sound and found a door. Half-rotted, warped, untouched. No claw marks. They hadn't tried it. But in front of it, a mound of feces nearly 2 feet high. Dark, wet, still steaming, littered with bones, fur, and chunks of raw, undigested meat. I fought back my gagging as I reached for the handle. The door creaked, moaning against the pressure of the fecal heap as I pried it open. I had to step in it just to squeeze in. Warm sludge soaked my boot as I managed to pass through the narrow crack, holding my breath, the light trembling in hand. Then, crash! The front door burst inward behind me. Wood shattered. Rain poured in. The monsters were inside now. I pulled the door shut, silent, slow, and let the darkness cover me, barely breathing. The stench inside the closet was unbearable. Hot feces, wet fur, piss, and decay. My stomach twisted, but I forced it down. This wasn't war. This was worse. Outside the thin wooden door, heavy claws scraped across the floorboards, followed by low, guttural breathing. They were big. They were close. I reached into my rucksack and slowly pulled out the 12-inch combat knife I kept for protection. The steel felt cold and solid in my palm. I squatted low, facing the door. No escape. If they opened the door, I would die, fighting. The two beasts moved through the cabin, room to room, circling, pacing. They knew something was wrong, but couldn't quite place it. They couldn't smell me, not yet. The larger one, the alpha by the sound of it, stepped into the bedroom. I tensed. It moved deliberately, checking every corner, letting out deep, rumbling growls like it was trying to scare whatever might be hiding. Then it reached the far corner, right next to the closet. I realized the door hadn't closed all the way. I backed further into the closet as it sniffed. Long and loud, the air in the closet grew stale, thick with heat, rot, and tension. Then, a clawed hand slid through opening of the door. Long, black claws scraped across the floorboards, stopping just inches from my boot. I didn't move. I couldn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't dare exist. The hand groped slowly, deliberately, fingertips tapping, claws twitching like antennae. It wasn't grabbing for anything specific. It was feeling, searching, or maybe exploring a space it hadn't investigated before. It paused. One of the claws grazed the wall near my leg. My heart slammed against my ribs. Staying still was my only choice. The hand slowly retracted, disappearing back through the door. A deep, guttural huff followed, low and heavy like a beast exhaling its disappointment. Then came the sound. Urine, spattering, hissing, soaking into the wooden floorboards outside the closet like hot oil on a skillet. I clenched my jaw, then slowly tilted the pen light down. A puddle was spreading under the door, dark and steaming, seeping toward my feet. The stench was unbearable, and all I could do was sit in silence while the monster pissed on my hiding place. I just shook my head. Freaking great, I muttered silently. Bad news? It just pissed on me. Good news? It had no idea I was in here. As the creature padded away, I took a better look at my surroundings. The closet was bigger than it seemed. 8 feet deep, 6 wide. Big enough to store a body. I turned and swept the pen light across the back corner. A shoe. I slowly crept towards it, careful not to squish through the soaked floor. The light traced upward. Denim-covered leg, then another. A torso in a flannel shirt slumped over. Then an arm, still gripping a .357 Magnum. The body had dried up, skin mummified, lips pulled back in a silent scream. A dark splatter behind the skull confirmed it. I swallowed hard. Whoever he was, he'd blown his brains out at least 6 months ago. And then the thought hit me like a punch to the gut as I stared down at the corpse. Dry, shrunken, the skin stretched taut over bone. The .357 still rested in its hand like it was waiting to be fired again. The back of the skull was gone. A dark bloom stained the closet wall behind it. Close range, no hesitation. What if this guy came here the same way I did? Car broke down. Rain came. He saw the cabin. He ran. He hid. Right here. I looked around. Same door, same filth, same closet. Those things stalking the cabin just like now. Waiting. Not sniffing him out, not forcing their way in, just lingering, circling. Letting the silence rot him from the inside. Days. Maybe a week. Alone with that smell, that fear, that knowing. And then he broke. I exhaled slowly, barely a whisper. The storm still raged outside. Claws still scraped the floorboards. Low huffs and clicks echoed from the next room. What if they don't leave? I stared at the dead man and wondered. Was my future staring back? I took a long, silent breath through my nose and let it out slow through his mouth. Calm. Focused. I quieted my mind. Slowed my pulse. Panic gets you killed. I learned that in jungle firefights, on silent night ops, where even a breath too loud could give away your position. I wasn't some fool stumbling through the woods. I was trained, and I was still alive, and planned to stay that way. The storm outside had softened. The thunder no longer shook the walls. The rain had faded to a steady hiss, and now I could hear them better. The sound came from the front room, wet chewing, bones cracking, guttural growls and the rip of flesh being torn from whatever poor bastard they'd found. It wasn't just sickening. It was real. Too real. I pressed my back deeper into the closet wall and listened. Every sound, every snarl, every slurp painted a picture in my head. They were feeding, satisfied, comfortable. And that meant one thing. They weren't in any rush to leave. Claws scraped the floor as the smaller one moved into the bedroom and fell onto the collapsed bed. It let out a loud yawn. Then I heard it sleeping. I thought about the corpse behind me, about the gun in that dead man's hand. I wasn't going to end up like him. I had heard stories. Everyone had. Bigfoot, rakes, dogmen, wendigos, monsters that walked like men and stalked the deep places of America. Some said they were military experiments, escaped weapons, black-budget nightmares gone rogue. But I had seen military projects. I ran ops for the kind of people who built those rumors. And I knew, without a doubt, this wasn't military. These creatures weren't engineered. They weren't tactical. They didn't use doors. They didn't clear rooms. They didn't hunt for war. They hunted for necessity, not sport, and protected their territory fiercely. I leaned in and slowly pried the revolver from the corpse's stiff, curling fingers. The skin tore with a soft crackle. Keeping the penlight aimed low as I popped the cylinder open. 2 bullets. That was it. I exhaled through my nose and looked back at the corpse. That's why you did it. Took more bullets to kill them than what you had. Bump. The closet door twitched. I snapped the revolver closed and raised it. Eyes locked on the wood. Bump. Harder instead. Then the smell hit. Hot. Foul. Rank beyond words. A wave of rot and death so thick it coated my tongue. I clenched my jaw, trying not to retch. Heavy claws clicked on the floor outside, slowly moving away. The big one just dropped a pile by the closet. Then I heard a low, guttural growl from the bedroom. The smaller one. It shifted on the ruined bed, sniffed the air, and let out a sharp snarl. Displeased. Then it roared. I flinched as the smaller creature hurled itself at the larger one, her growls sharp and angry. Accusatory. Almost human. Why did you do that? The alpha spun with a guttural snarl and unleashed a roar that shook dust from the beams above. It was a sound of dominance, final, unforgiving. The smaller one dropped back instantly. She whimpered low and backed away. Then, without another sound, they padded into the front room. I heard two heavy thuds as their massive bodies collapsed onto the wooden floor. Silence followed. Then came the deep, steady rhythm of breath. Slow, measured. Sleeping. I sat on the floor beside the decomposing corpse, its milky eyes staring into space. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Finally, I exhaled, a long, shaky sigh. I dared a glance toward the door. "They're not leaving," I whispered to the dead man, my voice trembling. I closed my eyes. My head jerked forward. My chin had nearly hit my chest. I almost dozed off. The deep, rumbling snores from the front room reminded me of two things. The beasts were still here and still asleep. I used the penlight to check my watch. 12:05 a.m. "Long night," I muttered, glancing upward. The rain had stopped, but the stillness that followed wasn't peace. It was pressure. The kind that builds behind your ears, like the scream of silence before a migraine. High-pitched, shrill, crawling under the skin, panic disguised as stillness. I shifted my weight. Thought about moving. Just a little. Maybe to the kitchen. Maybe out the back door, if there was one. Quietly. I could be quiet. I had to try. I stood up slowly, every muscle stiff from being crammed in the closet. I had only taken one step when I heard it. Clicking. A sharp screech sound like claws tapping on wood, coming from outside. Opposite the left wall. Another click followed, then another. 3 distinct sources. All moving, all drawing closer. The beasts in the front room stirred. A low growl echoed through the cabin like thunder rolled through the floorboards. A warning. "We hear you. Stay back." But whatever was outside either didn't understand or just didn't care. I felt it in my teeth before I saw it. The awful scrape of something dragging its claws along the outer wall. A slow, deliberate raking, like butcher knives against bone-dry wood. I held my breath. Then the alpha roared, and it was the kind of sound that shook the soul loose. The floor vibrated as a massive piece of awful wool crashed. Splinters exploded through the air as it burst through the window and wall like a wrecking ball of fur and fury. I hit the floor, hands covering my ears, my heart pounding. Something else was out there. Something bold enough, or monstrous enough, to make the dogman afraid. The cabin shifted. Wood groaned and screamed, and then the entire left wall was gone, torn away like wet paper. I spun toward the sound, heart slamming against my ribs. Above me, thud, thud, thud. Footsteps scrambled across the roof. Heavy, fast, inhuman. A high-pitched, shrieking roar tore through the night, and something crashed through the wall. Splinters rained down like needles. The whole cabin shuddered under the impact. Rafters groaned, floorboards cracked. I realized with a sick twist in my gut, the entire structure was coming down. I moved for the closet door, yanked. Nothing. Wedged shut from the shifting foundation. No way out. Not that way. Then came another roar, primal and vicious. The second dogman. It met whatever had crashed through the wall head on. The floor shook as they rolled and slammed into walls, snarling and clawing. The growls blended into a storm of violence. But then a third screech. Louder, sharper, wrong. It cut through the others like a blade through cloth. The alpha howled in response and was cut off mid-roar. The sound of bodies slamming, snarling, tearing. Crack. The cabin's spine broke as the roof buckled. A chunk of ceiling collapsed, dragging the closet wall with it. The world exploded around me in a burst of debris and dirt. I coughed through the dust and blinked, then realized I was exposed. No more hiding. The rotting corpse lay half buried beside me, jaw open, as if shocked by the chaos. Then my eyes adjusted and I saw them. 3 pale, emaciated figures. Skeletal things with impossibly long limbs and black, lidless eyes. Their mouths were filled with ragged teeth. They moved like spiders, fast and jagged. Each one tore at the 2 dogmen with razor claws and unrelenting hunger. I froze. Rakes. Jackals of the forest, and why shouldn't they be real as well? After all, I'm looking at a pair of werewolves. Then I saw something that sent a shiver down my spine when I looked at the rakes. They were winning. The dogmen were fighting for their lives, snarling, bleeding, fur matted with gore. The alpha held one off with brute strength, while the second dogman, the smaller one, yelped, pinned beneath a rake. The creature raised its claws, ready to end her. I had to do something. My eyes went wide. My brain screamed, "Don't do it," but I was already moving. I lifted the 3.57 and fired. Boom! The round exploded through the rake's head, punching clean through its enormous black, void-like eye. It jerked back, shrieking in a high, hideous pitch. And then everything stopped. 2 dogmen, 2 remaining rakes. They all turned. All looked at me. Smoke curled from the barrel of the revolver. I felt my heart stop. "Oh, shit," I muttered. The female dogman didn't hesitate. She snatched the twitching rake by the throat, let out a guttural snarl, and ripped its chest open with both claws. The creature spasmed once, then went still, its black blood hissing as it hit the floor. Then she looked at me. Those glowing yellow eyes locked on unreadable and intense. Moment passed, long enough for me to wonder if she would lunge. But instead, she turned. Looking at her mate, the alpha was pinned under the largest rake. The thing bore down with all its weight, claws sinking into thick muscle. The alpha's limbs kicked and bucked, but it was losing ground. Before I could even form a thought, the female launched herself into the fray, crashing into the monster with savage force. The rake reeled, but held its ground. It was larger, stronger, more vicious than the others. Still, she fought. The alpha seized the opening. With a roar that shook the cabin's remains, it twisted toward the other rake, jaws wide, and clamped down on its skull. Bone cracked. Black ichor oozed between its teeth. The rake twitched once, then went limp in its death throes. One left, and it was using the female as a shield. It stood tall, pale, and skeletal, with the smaller dogman in one clawed hand, its long fingers wrapped around her neck. It bared its fangs at the alpha and dragged the female between them like a puppet. Each step forward it bit her, small, deliberate wounds meant to taunt. The alpha growled, low and heartbroken, its ears folded back, chest heaving, rage tempered by despair. Then, bang! The rake shrieked, a chunk of its head vaporized. I moved to get a better shot, my arm still extended, the 3.57 revolver smoking. The rake staggered, released the female, and the alpha pounced. The clearing erupted in chaos, snarling, tearing, howling. Blood splattered the trees. The last rake was shredded, piece by piece, until its twitching limbs no longer moved. I backed away, trembling. The revolver was empty. No more chances. No more miracles. I was near the tree line when I heard the howls echo, long and victorious. They were celebrating. I turned slowly, inching away from the clearing behind the cabin, step by step, trying not to look like prey. Then I heard them. Crunch. Crunch. They were following. I turned and kept my hand on my knife. They were 10 feet away. silent. Their yellow eyes fixed on me, unreadable and full of something primal. Shadows flickering as I watched their massive forms close in. The alpha stepped forward, sniffed the air. Then the female followed, her breath still ragged from the fight. They began to circle me, silent, deliberate, each moving in a different direction, their footfalls heavy, their shadows stretching over me. Every few steps, one would lean in, nostrils flaring. Inhaling my fear was like a scent they craved. The male stopped directly in front of me. It bent low, its massive head filling my field of vision. Yellow eyes locked on mine, burning with a single word that wasn't spoken but screamed into my skull. Kill. Its teeth were blackened with gore, the wet shine of fresh blood, the rake's blood clinging to the jagged edges. It roared, the sound ripping through the night like tearing metal, and its breath washed over me, hot, thick, reeking of copper and half-digested meat. My eyes darted down that black hole of a throat, a tunnel of death, lined with fangs. I couldn't take it. So I just shut my eyes, bracing for the bite. I felt my body trembling so hard that my bladder gave way. Warm urine slid down my leg. Every muscle locked tight, waiting. But nothing came when I opened my eyes, slow, disbelieving. The creatures were already turning away, their hulking forms melting back into the darkness. Not a glance back, not a sound. Just the sound of my own breathing, ragged, hollow, and the fading echo of claws on the ground. I dropped to my knees, breath catching in my throat. I was alive. 1 week later, I sat across from a panel of stern-faced airline executives, my suit pressed, my voice steady. When they asked me why he left my last job, I smiled and simply said, I was looking for a new challenge. A change of scenery where I could apply my experience and training to contribute to a forward-moving company like yours. With a newfound confidence, professionalism, and clear skill set, sealed the deal. They hired me on the spot. A year and a half later, I closed on a quiet home nestled in Kennesaw, Georgia. Tree-lined, peaceful, safe, or so I thought. A lot had changed for me since that night. I was still myself, but more. Sharper, grounded, unshakable. Fear had a new name, and it wasn't turbulence or engine failure. I flew through storms now without flinching, because nothing at 30,000 feet could compare to what I'd survived on the forest floor. I always believed the only reason I made it out alive was because of one thing: mercy. Mercy I'd shown when I could have stayed hidden. Mercy returned by canine monsters with yellow eyes, sharp claws, and a nightmarish fangs. And maybe that had earned me something, or maybe it had marked me. One night after work, as I pulled into my driveway, it was 9 o'clock, the hour when the neighborhood was quiet, settled, windows glowing with the soft glow of TVs and kitchen and porch lights. All I wanted was to strip off my uniform, grab something to eat, and collapse into bed. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, bending to scoop up the pile of mail. That's when the smell hit me, a combination of wet dog, sewage, and copper. I noticed the sliding glass door in the kitchen had been smashed. Then a low, guttural growl slid through the quiet. Close. Too close. Two massive shadows stretched across my living room wall, moving toward me. Yellow eyes locked onto me, burning in the dark. I barely had time to gasp. Something slammed into me hard, pinning me against the wall. A clawed hand raked across my chest, crushing the breath from my lungs. I tried to scream, but it never made it out, smothered under the other hand as its talons pierced my skin. hot breath reeking of copper and rot washed over me face. The growl deepened, and then I was wrenched from the wall and dragged across the floor, the sound of tearing flesh filling the room. Outside, the night stayed quiet, until a dark, spreading pool began seeping from the gap under the front door. Warm blood spilling onto the porch, inching toward the welcome mat. The yellow eyes inside blinked once and vanished back into the dark. He thought that night in the closet had changed everything, that saving them meant something. But dogmen don't keep promises. They don't remember debts. They only remember the hunt. Years later, they found him. And this time, there was no escape. Because in the end, they weren't friends. They weren't grateful. They were predators. And he was prey. Thanks for listening to Trapped. If you enjoyed this story, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps me keep bringing you dark tales like this one. And trust me, the next one will be even darker.